Joining me live in the studio for today's show is Rival Console.
Hello.
Hey, Ryan.
Hi.
It's your previous guest on the show. So I was looking back at the dates and it was August 2020 and you were my first live guest back in the studio after, you know what. So yeah, here we are. It's been like 5 years. It's flown by. But how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Yep. About to be going on a tour around Europe and elsewhere, and yeah, the sun's out, so everything's good.
Everything's good, isn't it? And you're about to, release a new baby into the world, your new record. How has it been sort of working on this record? At what point did you start to sort of dig into it?
Some of the pieces of music on the record actually go back quite a long way, including Catherine, which I started maybe 5 years ago, because I just, for some reason, thought that this melody, which is the main kind of essence of the song, was very interesting, but didn't know how to kind of reconcile it into a song structure. So I didn't force it, and I just kept coming back to it year after year after year until I kind of found a structure that made total sense for the idea. But I mean, the way that I work is quite chaotic in a way. It's just lots of making and piecing things together over time, almost like research, rather than here's a specific idea and I carry out a specific idea. That does happen, but it's mainly almost stream of consciousness, thinking out loud.
Yeah. And I read that you had like a little bit of time away from the production desk, that there was a few sort of moments of frustration with this one. What was how was it just kind of you needed to go out and just sort of get a bit of headspace from it?
I think I had quite serious burnout, actually. Probably like a lot of people did after the pandemic, where like if you were like me, I think I worked too much during the pandemic, and so for some reason I just was just absolutely depleted for like over a year, and to the point where I actually didn't even have any connection to any music. So it felt quite jarring and empty, and luckily just things naturally started to kind of come together after a while, which was it was an alarming experience, but everything feels quite good now and natural, thankfully. Yeah.
And was that just, going back over like little snippets that you'd done in a sort of stream of consciousness way, and then being like, oh, I can use that, and this I can use, and,
Well, there were a few kind of like significant moments, I think, where if obviously when you're making, the goal is often to really be connected and have the work resonate with you, but that doesn't always happen, and that's fine. But there were a few moments that really resonated with me on the record, that made me sort of feel like, okay, yes, actually this is something that I should keep doing. Yeah. Because I have such a close relationship with music making because I've been doing it on an almost daily basis for nearly 20 years. And so anything that you do a lot can become intense, but also can have problematic aspects to it. So I think it's just about also being mindful when making, and just trying to be sensitive and not, and just have a general awareness of making over a long period of time, because you can't just do what you want, really. You have to sort of allow things to go in the direction that they go in.
Yeah, and this is 9 albums in. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank
How
you.
exciting is that? Like 9 albums.
Yeah, it's a lot of records.
Yeah. Where are we finding you at sort of, this 9th chapter, I suppose?
I think this record's kind of the most vibrant and colourful record that I've ever made. And again, that's not, super intentional. A lot of it is just a natural kind of byproduct of where I'm at in my life right now. But I'm really happy with the sort of the array of kind of different ideas on the record. Almost every piece of music is a different genre to an extent. And that's kind of things that I've done before on Persona, but this feels like a much more vibrant, dare I say it, optimistic record. Yeah.
And was that, was a lot of it made kind of on the move? And because I was listening to the new tracks, and I think actually it's the case with a lot of your music, but there is this sort of sense of like moving forwards and propulsion, sort of like this movement thing. How did you make this record? Was it a lot in the studio? Were you on the move? Were you on the laptop?
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces were made away from the studio or away from home. 2 pieces, for example, were made on a residency in Lisbon.
Okay, cool.
Lots of pieces were made whilst touring. or at least fleshed out and kind of sketched out when touring. And I think, I mean, a lot of my music tends to have a constant forward momentum because in my subjective opinion, it wants to resolve into the future. Any kind of idea in the present wants to kind of go somewhere else. So that's kind of just a compositional style that I have. But yeah, definitely a lot of this record was made in different locations, and that's kind of nice because you tend to perceive and have a different opinion about art when you're away from a known place. So that's kind of refreshing and helpful, I think, for making judgments about things. You know, if you were to just listen to something on a train, for example, you might, just with the background constantly moving via the window, you might perceive something in there that's not there, or you know, you might get an idea. So there's all these kind of like very normal things, but I think are quite helpful.
How specific did it go in terms of, you know, sounds and capturing things on your travels?
Well, I mean, I am quite obsessive, so there's just an array of research that's going on, really. Definitely a big part of the way that I make music is designing sounds. And, well, I'd actually say electronic music in general is quite obsessive about designing sounds and designing a sound to have a certain function in a song. And there's just years and years worth of that really that go into a record like this, because there might be something that I've made a few years ago that didn't make any sense to me then, but all of a sudden is very important in a new context of now, or you know, in the future. So there's a constant like flow of materials, almost you could think of it as like I'm making materials and then they can be reused or, you know, recontextualized in the future in songs, you know. So not everything's planned, it's more playful and just sort of playing with sound almost like it's clay or, you know, material based. Yeah,
sort of shaping it. Yeah. Was there anything kind of that inspired this record, or like anything that in your life that sort of fed into it?
I think probably getting to a point where my mental health was better was an influence on the record, and that probably has an impact on the kind of tone and feel of the record to some extent. But I mean, I have many influences when I'm making music, and they don't obviously just come from music. But yeah, I don't know, because this is the 9th record, obviously there's been a lot of exploration and, you know, investigating different ways of making music, and from the very heavy to the kind of much lighter. So I think it's just a continuation of my, you know, desire to explore the medium of electronic music. And again, this is kind of without vocals, so it's quite a I think of electronic music as being naturally abstract. So yeah, it's just a continuation really of sort of, there's so much you can do when you're exploring abstract things, basically. That's what I'm attracted to. Whereas if you add singing, for example, to music, by its nature of having lyrics, it kind of feels like it's more pointing towards a specific direction. It isn't necessarily, but it feels like it might be.
Yeah.
And so when electronic music has no sort of human presence almost, it feels like there's so many possibilities to do things, ranging from extremely kind of obvious and normal to an extent to totally bizarre. So I just like this kind of huge landscape that you can explore the boundaries between.
Yeah, and it leaves it so open for interpretation as
well.
Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
So people can really take, there's not something that's steering it in a lyric or something that's steering in a direction, whereas it's more about feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the emotion that it taps into.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like that's that emotion and that, because I always say you're an absolute genius when it comes to like melody and just these melodies that kind of get in you, you know, like really beautiful melodies. And I feel like Catherine has that. It's actually dedicated to your partner as well. I presume she's called Catherine.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this track, and then we'll play it in a minute.
Yeah, so this, as I mentioned previously, was something that I created this melodic idea a long time ago that I kind of fell in love with, but sometimes you just don't know what to do with something, even if you really like it, and you know, you're inspired by it. And so it's named after her because at some point I showed it to her and she was like, "Oh, this is great." And it's sometimes you need like external validation of your ideas to realize, through other people's excitement, the potential of an idea, because you can get very lost in your own mind when making in any medium. And so it was kind of like a wake up call to the simplicity of, oh, actually, I should just explore this idea, because if I was excited by it before and you see people excited by it again, there's something there that's resonant. And so, it's just a little nod to that.
Okay, well, let's play it. This is Rival Consoles and Catherine, and it is from the brand new album Landscape from Memory, which we're getting on Erased Tapes on July the 4th. So this is Catherine, and it's by Rival Consoles, who is my guest on this week's show here on Soho Radio. And this is Catherine from the new album. And Ryan Lee West joins me in the studio to talk all about it. And it just sounds so great. I love it. It's kind of like got that clubby sound, that like clubby sound.
For me, it's a bit more club leaning, I think. But it's also extremely minimal and quite. There's a softness to it, really, versus a lot of club music. I think tends to want to go a little bit more aggressive, especially now.
Yes, especially now. Feels like everything's quite like full on now. Dance music wise. But how have you found, because you've already played a couple of shows and obviously you're going to be doing like a load of touring and there's going to be a London show quite soon, but you already did, was it Madrid?
I just played Madrid and Barcelona, back to back.
So how was it playing this new stuff live? And
that was...
Did you figure it out?
The first show was amazing, actually. Madrid, the energy in the room was kind of wild, and that's always exciting because obviously you feed off that energy. But I'm still developing the show because I want it to sort of change as the shows go on. But we're really excited about the kind of show that we've got right now, and it's just a big journey, basically, an audio-visual journey.
Lots of visuals, I was going to ask.
Just a very playful, abstract. The musical show is long, and so there's so much that we can explore, so many different sensations ranging from, very intense, very sort of emotional, very delicate and, fragile, just a wide range of kind of musical and visual sensations. That's what I kind of want to achieve with the show.
Sort of taking people on a journey, giving them the full experience.
A journey more like that's closer to a film rather than like here's club music, because there's obviously people that do that and do that really well, but I've been more interested in a kind of narrative that has many different like shifts, really.
And we should talk about Erased Tapes as well, because you were the first ever signing to Erased Tapes, a great label, which is, all those years ago. I guess they've been your home. It's been a constant throughout for your music.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever asked you, how did you meet Robert from the label, and how did that come to fruition?
Well, this is going to age as both, but it was actually MySpace, believe it or not.
Was it?
I sent a message in those days, which now feel like 1,000 years ago. And I'm just really lucky because then, of course, the label wasn't really an established label because it was just starting, basically. So it's just this strange coincidence of just... I think I liked the way that the label presented itself online, which was crazy because it didn't really have much of a like ethos. But just luckily, it's turned out to be an incredible journey, and I've been there since it started. So it's a really unusual thing. You could just never expect that. It's a kind of a, well, not a rare thing, but it's
just
almost romantic.
It is, and it's this relationship, and it's this kind of marriage almost that you've gone through all these years together.
Especially because, of course, if you're making music and you want to sign to a record label, the chances are you will sign to a record label that's already got a history. Whereas this was an unusual circumstance where I kind of witnessed the history as well as, it's quite rare. But I definitely, from doing that, I've created a kind of like almost warped perspective where I urge other people to start things anew, because it's crazy in a way, because obviously people want to join things that are already successful and established, but I think making connections and starting things from scratch is way more meaningful. Yeah,
definitely. And we live in an era now, don't we, where cultivating your community and scene is so important in music. So that's what they did and what you were part of at the beginning.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm lucky.
Yeah. There's another track available from the new album called Known Shape. Let's talk a little bit about this. I read on the PR it said that the drums are made from rotating switches. And I'm wondering, is that literal switches going on and off? Or?
Well, kind of if you have like a rotary switch that kind of click, 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 click as you turn it on like old machines.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I mean, this is kind of a thing that people in production have done for many years, is explore, mechanical sounds basically, because you can create them, but it's just sometimes amazing just to hear any kind of mechanism move. It will have its own rhythmic quality, and so the drums are really, well, the whole song actually is kind of coming from this very mechanical sensation that you could try to create in a computer, but often you miss out on some of the nuance of what actually happens in the kind of real mechanical world. And so it's just a kind of borderline obsession of mine that I've explored for many years.
Yes, yeah. And again, this track, a stunning melody. What emotions are you trying to convey with this one?
I really love the kind of way that there's an emotional kind of chord progression in this song, which is so unusual because it's very, like, the rhythm of it's very inhuman, but it feels like what's being said is very human. So it's kind of this interesting contrast between rhythm and, the kind of colours or the note choices of the chords. But some of it was probably accidental. Definitely a lot was played in. I was playing in all the kind of the chordal ideas actually by hand, but then they're being sort of rhythmically triggered by these invisible layers. It's kind of just like a simple gating process, but it's basically like a very human piece of music that then has like this very like mechanical layer forced on top of that. So it's like two worlds colliding, but it's just a very it's incredibly, even though there's not many layers in this piece of music, it feels much more dense than it is because it's so sort of like trying to think of the right word here, syncopated.
Yes.
It's heavily syncopated, like the most syncopated thing I've ever made, where almost nothing ever lands on the same instance in time. It's just everything's between everything else.
And there's this wonderful piece of artwork that accompanies it, is the sort of the graphical score.
Yeah, that's something that I made,
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I quite like it as a print. It's lovely, it's beautiful, and it's kind of what it looks like, the score in an artwork, Yeah,
it's kind of like a continuation of graphical scores that I've often used just to illustrate or to help problem solve the music. And that's an old kind of attitude that dates back, probably nearly 100 years now. So not like, it's basically an alternative to the notation that classical music has.
Yes.
And so early 20th century composers started to create their own sort of like graphical notation to describe things for players. And I've always found it really beautiful and interesting. So I often sort of sketch out my music in that way.
Yeah, what a lovely thing to have. You have to blow it up and put it on the wall if you haven't already. So there's touring. Obviously, the album comes out on the 4th of July. And then more tour dates. And you said earlier you're going to be going to New Zealand and Australia.
New Zealand and Tasmania, yeah.
Tasmania, yeah. How incredible.
For the first time.
Yeah,
I'm really lucky, yeah. But hopefully we're not too depleted from the European shows, because I've not taken such a long sort of flight for a while.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of travel, but so exciting. And you're feeling really excited to have some new tracks to play and the set and everything. And
really excited because it's a completely new show, audio and visual, so it's just going to be nice to share that with fans, old and new.
Yeah, and there's a London show at Here.
Yeah, we're playing the Altonet on the 8th of May.
Yeah.
That should be exciting. I've never played there.
Yeah.
And I've played many venues in London, but this is one of the few venues that I haven't played yet.
Apparently the sound system in there is next level.
Yeah, the sound is incredible. I recently saw Floating Points there. That was amazing. I don't know if you were there for that.
I wasn't, but I do love, I've been to a lot of Floating Points gigs,
But yeah, I agree that the sound is great, and it's got a very intense backdrop for LED sort of visual projection. So it was not projection, but visual shows. So it's going to be a really intense show, I think, because of the sound and the visuals are going to be very powerful.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I really can't wait to hear the rest of the record. What do you hope people will kind of, all your fans will, and new fans will take away from this new album?
I think for anyone that's a fan of my music will just instantly recognize a constant kind of like exploration into different ways of making music, from light to heavy. But this is, as I've said before, like, much more vibrant, and it's much more colourful somehow. Even though all music is colourful, it just feels very colourful, like, and it makes sense, I think, that it's coming out in the summer, because it just feels like a lot of the colours in the music relate to that sensation.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, let's finish on it and enjoy the rest of the touring and the summer and the release and everything.
Yeah, I'll try. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.